Statistics South Africa shows that the consumer price inflation remained unchanged at 4.9% for the month of September on an annual basis, while inflation increased by 0.5% in September from August. This comes after inflation dropped by 0.2 percentage points to 4.9% in August compared to 5.1% in July. Food and non-alcoholic beverage inflation increased from 0.6% of a percentage point in August compared to 0.7 of a percentage point in September, while transport decreased from 1.3 percentage points in August compared to 1.2 percentage points in September. The latest inflation print remains well within the Reserve Bank's target band of 3 to 6%. Newly appointed Finance Minister Tito Mboweni is expected to focus on how government will balance increasing spending pressure against low revenue in a weak economic environment when he delivers the mid-term budget policy statement this afternoon. Well, for more on what to expect, we cross to our business anchor, Arabile Gumede, who's standing by for us in Parliament. Good afternoon, Arabile. So what are the expectations?
Yeah, good afternoon, Nompumelelo. Well, you can certainly expect there to be high expectations here, but ones that are perhaps a little sobering, because the fact of the matter is we have a lot of hard work to do, and the grafting does begin right now. It may be hot and it is a little bit sweaty, but I can tell you now that it's going to be even harder and a whole lot more sweat-filled if we don't get this economy running and on the board. I am joined by two gentlemen to help me unpack perhaps the business and labor elements to exactly what the budget should perhaps entail. I am joined by Dennis George from Fedusa and Sandile Zungu from the Black Business Council. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It is beginning to heat up really quite well. An hour and a half to go. Your sentiments, your thoughts, your expectations?
I expect the Minister of Finance to give us an indication in the short to medium term how high is the economy going to grow. We also have got very tall targets in the National Development Plan. We've got targets that come from the Job Summit and the stimulus package. Where will the money come from? I've got some ideas, but I'm looking forward to hearing from the Minister.
I'll ask you about those ideas in a moment or two as well. But Mr. George, let's get your expectations as well for this MTBPS.
Yeah, look, the budget, medium-term budget policy statement lays the foundation, for expenditure of government, but also looking at the revenue side. In between the two, expenditure and then your revenue, you will find a deficit, as we'd expect the deficit to increase more because of the shenanigans that's going on at SARS. That we're operating without a National Planning Commission. We've got an acting person there. And you can see the fight and the battle, taking forward this process is going to be very important because our members, the public servants, have also received already the negotiations. And what is critical, is the continuous thing to create also a platform in this particular budget for infrastructure investment, because that is the job creation outside of the public service going to help us to stimulate the economy and to also create growth for the future.
Do you think there's been sufficient collaboration between yourselves, between government, between even business as well, to perhaps create that environment that's going to be conducive to that growth structure that perhaps the Finance Minister can then speak to today?
Yes. Look, the cooperation already emerged in the State of the Nation address, where the President said it wants a job summit, which we have just had last week. And then we also had the health summit, that was on Saturday, and tomorrow we're starting with the investment conference in Johannesburg. So clearly this president wants to lay his step that he wants to come with a major economic emancipation to redress and to deal with the state capture and the corruption in the public servants. I think the kind of leadership that he provides, of bringing business, labor and government together to work for a better future for all South Africans.
Yeah. Mr. Zungu? It clearly is really important to have that partnership, right? And it's important, I suppose, now more than ever to also get that investment going. And with the investment conference happening at the back of the MTBPS, that's also quite critical, is it not?
Well, the President is doing all the right things just to set the tone and to create the right momentum and to re-inspire South Africans and the world to once again believe in South Africa. It's wonderful. But in the short term, the Minister of Finance doesn't have much leg room to really put to effect the promises. So I'm very inspired by the 50 billion rands that is going to be reprioritized from somewhere. But I would like to see the minister prioritizing that towards the township economies and SMMEs, because if you think that big business contains the solutions to our unemployment and growth issues, you are mistaken. Most of the growth is going to come from the SMME sector, and you have to inspire the townships to once again believe in this democracy. So that 50 billion rands, I hope, will be reprioritized towards the township economies.
Yeah. If it is reprioritized from those sort of places or from perhaps unused funds right through into the local economies, as you say, the significance then is the add back value at the end of that process to ensuring that when we come back to budget, those are the sectors that have also continued to aid that sector. We perhaps would say that we have an expenditure problem in the country, I suppose. Do you think we're at a point where our expenditure is something we're going to critically look at and bring down even further?
Something that the minister said in the last couple of days, probably with tongue-in-cheek, controversial. He said we are spending too much on the wage bill. That should be going towards infrastructure. It's a real issue that needs to be looked at. How to spend in those areas which will create goodwill for the future. So infrastructure spend is an important thing. The president wants to bring 400 billion rands allocated towards infrastructure to the presidency. He wants to have oversight for that. That's phenomenal. But most importantly, on the expenditure side, is to just make sure that there is discipline, because the ratings agencies, which are quite important from our sovereign ratings point of view, are watching that side like hawks. There is not much leg room on the revenue side. PAYE is showing signs of maturing, plateauing. VAT is a very sensitive issue. It's grown quite phenomenal beyond budget, but at some stage you've got to provide relief. Corporate tax is growing, but you can't squeeze the corporates too much, unfortunately. So the focus has got to shift back towards expenditure to create that leg room. Our economy has got to grow way beyond 2%. To really catch up with the demands of growth, including debt interest repayments by the sovereign state, to meet the targets of employment and other inequality targets that are envisaged in the National Development Plan. So the focus has got to be on SMME sector, because there's a greater elasticity from an employment point of view, and there's a greater elasticity from a growth point of view if you invest in the SMME sector.
Sure. Mr. George, it certainly wouldn't be a good sign for you. It's something that probably wouldn't make you happy at all when you hear any hints of a decrease in the wage bill for the country.
Yeah, look, the horse is bolted as far as the wages and collective bargaining, because just last year they signed a 3-year agreement. So that agreement is in the system, and the medium-term budget policy statement must adjust around that. But I think for us what is very important is two issues. Is the issues of job creation, because what job creation does, it creates automatically new taxpayers. And every new job that we create, that person become a contributor towards the fiscus through pay as you earn. And when the person goes and spends money in the economy through consumptions, that also helps through VAT. And what is critical for us, if we can create jobs, get job creation going, and we can get the economy to grow at the same time, then we are already on a path of moving in the right direction. And for us, we think that the partnership between government, business and labor and community is a very important process, and that we must work together in all honesty for our country and for our people.
Yeah. But one would also admit, though, that it is a difficult situation, right, on the expenditure side, and we need to tighten our belts even more when it comes to that wage situation. Would you suggest that, perhaps unions rethink the way things are done, or is it purely just from a governmental point of view?
Look, I think the president have already announced that he's doing a study currently in terms of the shape and the size of the cabinet. And also at this higher levels, but you find, some departments only have enough money to cover the cost. So therefore, it must probably be better to move departments like small business back into DTI, and other departments that is there. For instance, the higher education department and the basic education department can just become one department. And for us, what is important is that we must employ more people at the lower levels, like nurses and teachers, because that is the front line delivering shoulders for this country. And at the top ranks, where we have many people that earn huge salaries and we don't actually see their input or their productivity coming through the system.
Yeah. I suppose the bigger element there would be a change in policy as opposed to a direct influence on the change of jobs because of our bloated wage bill. Sandile, a very last question to you would be, do you think, however, we sit with the NDP as still the main aim of South Africa? Are we still sitting with that as the blueprint, or has the stimulus plan that the president is set to get money for through this midterm budget policy statement here now become the new blueprint?
Well, the stimulus package is just that. It's a stimulus package. How do you kickstart the economy from a dull state that it is in? How to re-inspire and put it on a different kind of growth trajectory. Once it's in a steady state, once it's cruising, then what is the aim? The aim is to meet the 2030 NDP targets. So these concepts are not mutually exclusive, they are reinforcing. So it's quite important that we continue to have all these good indicators like the initiatives like Investment Summit, which if the president has his way, $100 billion will come into this economy on a fixed direct investment basis, much sooner than 5 years, because it is when you then link those to BEE transformation, when you link those to SMMEs being integrated into supply chain of those who are making those foreign direct investment, that you begin to align everything that we do with the NDP plans. But most importantly, if the economy is going to grow at 1% as it is forecasted to grow, all of this is academic, because then we'll never meet our challenges. So the focus, all hands on deck, must be on growing this economy beyond even 2%, 3% in the short term.
Yeah. Mr. George, a final word from you. What's the one thing you'll perhaps be looking out for in this MTBPS?
The big thing that we're looking for is the announcement that the minister will make regarding the projections for growth, because that becomes a target for labor, for business, for everybody to focus on. And I think that is going to be critical to also bring in the reform measures that can support that, achieving that target.
Gentlemen, I thank you both as the sun begins to boil down, certainly here in Cape Town, outside Parliament. You can tell that the message is clear as well from these gentlemen, Dennis George, Fedusa, and Sandile Zungu from the Black Business Council. It is moments away, less than 2 hours now, of course, less than an hour and 30 minutes, in fact. As we continue to unpack the story, Tito Mboweni set to deliver that medium-term budget policy statement at 2 p.m. We will have it live for you, of course, and continued reaction just after that as well. We will continue to track this for you, Nompumelelo. Back to you in studio.